What happens when your radar shows 4 dead drones, but your defenses still have to fire? That paradox is the heart of tonight's story. We'll break down how a Ukrainian swarm used fog, a sacrificial hit on a comms antenna, and decoys mimicking migratory birds to force a threat downgrade, opening a launch window for a single ATACMS. Then the twist, a ghost boba reactivates the swarm through a laser-based mesh, jamming bubbles collapse, and one split-second maneuver defeats hypersonic interceptors. Watch to see how that confusion ended at a burning air defense nerve center. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How does a radar declare 4 drones dead while the crew keeps firing missiles into the fog anyway? That disconnect starts on a night when the air tastes wet and the horizon vanishes. 5 low-cost bobas push in toward a defended hub on Crimea's coast. The node sits on a ridge with a Nebo-M scanning low and long, a Pantsir S2 tucked close, and a high-power jamming suite that crews trust like a seatbelt. The first drone doesn't bother hiding. It races in and blows a non-critical comms mast, loud enough to jolt the watch floor into a higher threat state, but not vital enough to blind them. That blast is a nudge, not the punch. The other 4 flatten their profiles and slide into patterns that look slower, smaller, and annoyingly organic. Now the operators face the kind of inputs that make good crews second-guess themselves. Machine vision and radar filters do fine on clean skies. In fog and spray, they struggle. A low radar cross-section at bird speed drifts into the same bins as gulls and geese. Algorithms lean on history and Clutter maps. They downrank what looks harmless when it moves like wildlife. The 4 decoys exploit that bias. Their motors hum on a frequency band that sounds like winded scooters at distance. In the headphones, it blends into a chorus of mechanical chirps, a fake swarm sound that can mask direction. Auditory clutter piles on top of visual clutter, and the crew's confidence dips a notch. The Nebo-M's strength sits in VHF and L-band range finding, a good match for large profiles and high flyers. Against very small bodies in heavy ground clutter and weather, it can tag a contact but struggle to classify it cleanly. The Pantsir S2, built to clean up low-altitude leakers, has its own calculus. Each 57E6 interceptor carries a price tag that stings, and its envelope rewards fast, clear queues. Tonight it gets neither. That's when the EW team brings up the bubble. The spectrum clamps down like a lid. Data links go thin, then cut. On some consoles, the 4 drones freeze, icons stuck mid-arc, a frozen track looks like a kill, the room relaxes a half step. That's the trap. Jamming snaps command and control, but it doesn't rip out an onboard brain. Preloaded logic keeps an airframe moving through waypoints, measuring steps by IMU and terrain cues. The decoys drift on, wobbling like birds in a crosswind, because they are built to do exactly that once the radio dies. Spotters downrange start calling movement through night optics. Thermal scopes show faint, warm shapes skimming the fog line. The radar returns argue back. Doctrine cuts the debate. You shoot because letting a low, fast object near a defended node is worse than wasting a missile. A Pantsir can lob several interceptors in quick order, but every shot burns money and time. Each launch adds smoke, shock, and debris across the sensors. The more the crew fires, the dirtier the inputs get. And still the counters on the screen wobble between bird, biological, and unknown. The paradox sharpens. The system says safe, the glass says otherwise, so they keep shooting at tracks that register as low priority, and the magazines tick down, and that's the point of the exchange. Tens of thousands in airframes force a defense worth many millions to act like it's under real attack, while a separate strike option opens a narrow lane. The fog, the filters, the fake swarm sound, and the frozen icons all co-author that window. It won't stay open long, and when it does, the handoff moves beyond any drone pilot's thumbstick to something that thinks faster than the room watching it. What reactivates a dead swarm inside a jamming bubble and beats a hypersonic interceptor with a turn you barely see? The answer shows up right when the room thinks the fight is over. Jamming crests. Telemetry from the 4 decoys goes flat, then blank. The scopes on the Russian side clear like a windshield after a wipe. Crews call it clean. That's the moment the launch window opens. A single long-range strike rolls into timing, with the defenders convinced the problem is solved. They don't see the switch that takes place above their own node. The Pantsir crew still has a headache. Thermal eyes track skittish shapes knifing through fog, and Doctrine says, engage. A 57E6 leaves the rail with a hard shove and a bright burn. The first intercept closes fast, and under heavy saturation, no radio command should reach anything on the other side. No uplink, no correction, the geometry is set, and the kill should be routine. It isn't, because the swarm isn't talking on radio anymore. Enter the Ghost Boba. It started the night as a spotter, taking angles and timing the dance. Now it flips roles into a mission controller. It paints a tight, invisible ladder between itself and the decoys, using line-of-sight laser links, a whisper beam network that ignores the RF storm. At short range, optical comms can pass guidance ticks and time pulses with almost no signature, so the mesh rebinds even as the RF picture screams jammed. On the consoles below, the drones still look dead. Overhead, they are alive and taking cues as if the bubble never existed. The first cue is an override sent to the closest decoy. The Ghost pushes a small change, not a loop or a wide break, just a preloaded move the airframe can execute without thinking. Operators call it a delta maneuver. It's a sharp micro-turn, about 3 G's worth, timed against the Interceptors' terminal logic. Missiles need clean data to steer, they filter noise, and predict where a target will be a few tenths of a second ahead. In Clutter and Fog, that prediction slips. A small late change forces the Seeker to reacquire, and that costs distance. The 57E6 arrives, sees a slightly different angle, and goes high. The warhead pops behind the drone. Shrapnel nips the tail, but the motor keeps turning, and the autopilot corrects the wobble. The second decoy dives shallow and low, pulling the Pantsir's next shot downhill. Terrain matters here. Low radar cross-section near the deck blends with ground return, and a Seeker can lose skin track while the filters hunt for a stronger echo. The missile overshoots into a slope. In the same breath, another decoy runs straight into a different interceptor and blooms into heat. That sacrificial flash is not wasted. Thermal optics wash out for a moment. The Ghost node uses those seconds to pass more timing ticks, and the formation reforms just enough to look like a problem multiplying. Nebo-M now faces a backlog. Track files open and close as the system tries to sort valid targets from weather and debris. The Pantsir's magazines count down. Each launch adds smoke and fragments to a picture already stressed by its own jammer. Terminal guidance hates late. Small targets under that kind of clutter. The mesh doesn't need to last long. It only needs to keep cues flowing until the defender's rhythm falls apart. That break in rhythm buys the strike package its lane. While crews juggle false negatives and real kinetics, the inbound ATACMS, or a heavy guided bomb, crosses the last miles. The weapon drops in, the fireball is quick, and then the slow part begins. Fuel burns, relays fail, and the defended node goes dark as the command links fall silent. Resilience beats wattage. When a swarm heals itself and shares just enough data to keep moving, high-power jammers and premium interceptors start working against their owners. Every forced launch, every cluttered track becomes a liability baked into the defense. So where should the next dollar land if a $20,000 node can bend a $20 million shield? Software that learns, sensors that fuse better under clutter, or doctrine that rewards restraint under fog and false tracks? Tell me where you'd place the bet. Next, we'll test whether dispersed batteries and edge AI close that gap, or if pressure widens it in ways commanders can't afford.